This is part 2 of our league table predictions. If you haven't already, make sure you go back and listen to Sunday's episode where we revealed the teams who we think will finish between 24th and 17th for the 25-26 championship season. On Thursday, it's our top 8. Today, though, we're talking about the teams we have between 16th and 9th. Just a reminder, as always, we made these predictions by Justin picking his table, me picking mine, and then we merged them together into one. But without further ado, let's get into it. We begin with 4 teams here who we both had in similar positions, actually, Justin. This first one I think we both like, and I personally wanted to put them higher. However, I was struggling to justify it too much. But Justin, who have we got 16th?
Yeah, we've got Portsmouth. John Mousinho's Portsmouth, they are an interesting one. Whilst it's not an improvement on last year, I think probably stabilising and establishing themselves as a championship side is a massive thing for Pompey. They've got a passionate fan base, but not a big club with a hugely impressive infrastructure, if you like, because of the years of financial problems that have been well storied, in recent times. So it's going to be a slower build, but I think we saw elements of what what could give you a high expectation in the second half of last season, i.e. they performed as a top half team. But I think it's going to be a much tougher division this season, which probably pulls them back down again.
Yeah, considering Pompey finished 16th last season, I would like to think they'd improve on that, but it's difficult to say right now whether they will, mainly because their recruitment is different, shall we say. They particularly love signing players from Australia, but this summer they've also signed a lad from Hungary and a lad from Sweden. They like to try and find a bargain, do Pompey, and some of them have really worked out, most notably, of course, Josh Murphy. He was the second-tier signing of the season last season. He needs to have a big season again. Ditto Colby Bishop, and new signing, the return of the prodigal son, who was never really at Portsmouth in the first place, John Swift. They've got a few players who missed a lot of last season because of injury, and so with a bit of better luck, maybe they will improve on 16th. But the big thing for me is John Mousinho, a manager we both rate highly. Justin has done terrifically well in his first 2 full seasons as a manager, and with him there, I think they'll keep going in the right direction at the very least.
Yeah, he's a coach I rate highly as well. He's flexible. He plays to the strengths of the individuals, which is why I think Josh Murphy exceeded expectation as much as he did, because you give him the platform and he did that. And I think there's an air of man management that you've got to consider there as well. But going on to the playing the strengths of the individuals, he's shown that he can adapt as well. The defensive injuries last season for Portsmouth, I think, has been almost not touched upon enough, because the amount of centre-back pairings they had to play with last year because of centre-back injuries was ridiculous. There's Connor Ogilvie, who's a left-back, Marlon Pack, who's a centre-mid. He's dropped it at centre-back. Regan Poole, who's a right-back by trade, was playing at centre-half, amongst Rob Atkinson, etc. There's so many different combinations defensively they had to go with because of the injuries, and it never, other than sort of the first 3 months of the season, it never looked like Portsmouth were ever going to go down. And I think that's credit to John Mousinho. And I think if you give him maybe a slightly deeper squad and a bit of better luck with injuries, then he can do a lot. That being said, 16th is, as you say, on par with what they finished with last season. And it's something that I want to mention is, it is a tougher league. And I think if the league was as it was last year going into this season, i.e. teams around them are investing heavily and Portsmouth aren't, they're being clever with the recruitment, I think Portsmouth could be higher. But that's not a criticism of John Mousinho, even if you do finish 16th, because as I say, I think consolidation is a huge thing for a club of the size of the infrastructure that Portsmouth have.
Well, as far as the squad's concerned, there's a lot of ifs, but also a fair bit to be excited about. Nicolas Schmidt is a fantastic goalkeeper. They had their problems defensively last season, as you mentioned, Justin. That was mostly down to injury. Regan Poole and Connor Shaughnessy should both be solid if they can stay fit. But I'm also looking forward to seeing more of young Hayden Matthews, who became the most expensive Australian defender ever back in January when Pompey got him. Also, one of the most expensive signings in a long time. So definitely one to watch. Hopefully Jordan Williams can have a bit more luck with injury at right back. And then you've got Connor Ogilvie at left back, who I thought needed upgrading, but was actually pretty solid last season. In midfield, I'm hoping for a Josh Murphy style career renaissance for John Swift. They've got a lot of young players there who can step up as well. And then in attack, Josh Murphy, as we say, phenomenal last season. Callum Lang had a mini career of rejuvenation himself last season. And then a very interesting player who's probably one that's not on the radar of a lot of people is Andrej Segacic, another Australian who apparently turned down 20 clubs from across Europe this summer, including in the Premier League, to go to Portsmouth. So quite exciting. He seems to be one of the most promising young players in Australia, so definitely one to watch. And of course, there's Colby Bishop, 11 goals last season, despite missing the start of it due to heart problems. So wouldn't be surprised to see him top that tally this coming campaign either. Overall, I think a lot to like, Justin. A lot of potential, a few concerns in places, but still a lot to like.
Yeah, definitely a lot to like. It's full of runners. It's a squad full of runners, shooters and ball winners, with a little bit of quality in the final third as well. I think what I alluded to a moment ago, the backline still leaves me with some question marks, and there is a lack of depth in those wide areas. But as far as 11 goes, they could score a lot of goals, could score a few goals from outside the box and be really fun to watch. John Swift falls into that category. The Hungarian you mentioned was Mark Kozlowski. He loves a long-range shot. Luke Leroux's the chap from South Africa who's a defensive midfielder. So there are attributes being added to the squad which they didn't have last season, which I think is a very smart thing to do. And as you said, recruitment is very outside of the box, like their shooting could be this season, no less. But I think with that, being clever, I think is with the club, the budget they have, I think it's very smart from Portsmouth to do what they're doing.
Yeah, as the season went on, they became a more and more enjoyable team to watch as a neutral. So I'm hoping that continues for the coming campaign. One final thing to remember, of course, Justin, how can we forget? We're getting our first South Coast derby in the league in over 13 years. It's absolutely huge. I'm so looking forward to this.
I'm just trying to think. I don't think there are too many nasty players in the squad to really elevate this South Coast derby. Do you know what I mean? You want players who are going to kick and really aggravate supporters. So if there's anyone in the squads that could do that, please point them out to me. I'm not seeing it right now. Maybe I need a live example. But
just you wait until we have the first South Coast derby and everyone will be kicking each other all over the park.
What I'm comparing it to is, I think it was it the last South Coast derby? Ricardo Rocha, we've mentioned it on the pod very recently. Ricardo Rocha kicking the ball at Southampton fans in the stand, which isn't funny, but is funny.
Scenes we don't like to see, but secretly we do like to see.
Right, yeah.
Let's move on to the team we have 15th, and this may be a bit of an eyebrow raiser for some. It's Middlesbrough. Not sure when the last time was that we had Middlesbrough outside the top six, as a matter of fact. So this is quite a fall for them. But as I was putting my table together, Justin, I was struggling to justify dropping other teams lower, and I didn't have as much difficulty doing that with Borough. And that's because they've been on a steady decline over the last few seasons. They've gone from 4th to 8th to 10th. And I see no reason why that couldn't continue at the moment. I think the squad's the weakest it's looked in a while, and it's set to get weaker if they're going to be losing Hayden Hackney and Rab van den Berg, which is looking very possible. There haven't been many additions. They've failed in trying to get Chuba Akpom back, and they've got big question marks with the manager, Rob Edwards. I think he's a good appointment, but you can't completely say for sure that there's not going to be a hangover after the disaster which was last season. In the last 2 years, this astounded me when I saw this. In the last 2 years, he's got just 16 wins in 72 in all comps. So, yeah, a fair few issues with Middlesbrough Peachy.
A lot of red flags. With Borough. Making me feel a bit uncomfortable, a bit like an indigestion, really. I'm not overly worried about it. It's not a health concern, but it's not going away. And I don't like it. That's how I can best describe Borough at the moment. Buoyed by Hayden Hackney rejecting Ipswich. That being said, we know the price for him now, so I wouldn't be surprised if a late move in the window occurs from a Premier League club. Got Everton August 30th written all over it.
I was going to say, Justin, I feel like the reason he's rejected Ipswich is because he thinks a Premier League move maybe forthcoming. Yeah,
that's what I mean. August 30th, £20 million to Everton. Just, it's happening. It's written in the stars. They'll panic buy a championship midfielder. I do like Hackney, by the way. But yeah, the squad is looking weak and imbalanced. I think as well with the prospect of Hayden Hackney leaving, Middlesbrough have left it far too late to start recruiting. They're probably about 5 or 6 players short by my count of being a promotion contender, which is staggering really because the amount of money they have invested recently. It's a huge worry. It's a huge worry. And what's worried me most actually is Rob Edwards reverting to type. Now, what I mean by that is the recruitment. I know they probably do need players to come in at wing back, but for me, this is a loud shout out for me. If Rob Edwards plays to it at the back and wing backs next season, it will be a disaster for Borough. Of course, close to signing Callum Britton, linked with the potential signing of Max Alston from Columbus Crew. I was expecting some evolution from Edwards just to lend into that managerial uncertainty, and I don't think we're going to get it. Tactically in the league, it feels like there's been a big shift. Clubs are signing big number 9s and fast wingers, and this side lacks pace at the back and dominant defenders.
Yeah, well, as I say, I think the squad is the weakest it's looked in a while. Callum Britton is an excellent signing. Do not mistake that. He's one of the best right-backs in the league. They've spent $3 million on Alfie Jones from Hull. Can't say I'm blown away with that one. Otherwise, at the back, you've got Luke Ayling, Del Fry, George Edmondson, Darrell Lenihan, and Neto Borges. By and large, other than Britton and probably Fry, it's a set of solid but pretty unremarkable defenders there. And as we say, there is Rav van den Berg, who's a superb talent, but is expected to leave. Midfield is where they're strongest. However, Hayden Hackney, we've already mentioned it. Does he stay or does he go? I would say it's looking more likely that he'll go before the window closes. And if that does happen, that would be a huge blow because he's just simply one of the best midfielders in the division. They have got Aidan Morris, who's a very good player. And they've also signed Kante, Abdoulaye Kante, from Troyes for €3 million. A bit further forward, they have Finn Azaz, who's an excellent player, but Borough did seem a bit reliant on him at times last season, so we'll wait and see. In attack, you have Tommy Conway, Morgan Whittaker, Marcus Force, Riley McGree, Delano Bergzorg, a real mishmash of players who we know can be very good at this level. I'm not exactly getting out my seat for any of them right now, though. So not only is the squad looking weaker than it has in the past, there's not much depth there either in certain areas. They'll probably sign more before the window closes, but I personally wouldn't rule out them finishing even lower than 15th, perhaps, Justin.
Lower than 15th is an interesting one. Yeah, maybe with Rob Edwards in charge, that could happen. If somebody else was in charge, I might think different. That's just my own Rob Edwards scepticism. That being said, you mentioned the squad. It is imbalanced. It's terribly imbalanced. You don't even mention the goalkeeping department. You know, it's a worry. It's a worry. Mark Travis was on loan last season. He's of course gone to Everton on permanent, so there's no, he's not returning. So we're back to the weakness we had last season. And then where's the number 9? Where's the striker who's going to be a convincing source of goals? We know Middlesbrough have criminally underperformed their XG under Michael Carrick in recent years. Does that lend to a poor squad? Maybe. Yeah, a poorer squad than maybe what we anticipated. Probably lends to questions that Michael Carrick was actually maybe overachieving with a very normal squad. So, yeah, there are so many gaps that just haven't been filled. And I would look at recruitment and say, you're very good at signing individuals, but you're very good at putting a squad together. That's what I don't think they're very good at.
One final thing I'll say is Middlesbrough haven't won in pre-season. I remember Luton having a very poor pre-season 12 months ago, and the alarm bells started going off then. And then, obviously, we know what happened there. So we'll wait and see whether there is a hangover for Rob Edwards after what was obviously a disastrous campaign on his behalf. Next up is a team we are both quite excited about ahead of the new season. In fact, Justin Peach was so excited he picked them as his biggest overachiever in last Thursday's episode. In 14th place, we have Charlton Athletic. You, Justin, are really liking what they've been building this summer.
It's been a really smart summer for Charlton. They signed a good goalkeeper, they've recruited for goals and creativity in a team, and they have a savvy manager at the helm who's got a history of overachieving at championship level. More on this summer. Firstly, of players they've paid fees for outside of Thomas Kaminski, the oldest player they've signed and paid a fee for is Harvey Nibbs at 26. Of course, Rob Apter, Joe Rankin Costello, Charlie Kelman, all clever additions. Isaac Alar from Stockport is a smart one as well. They've got good depth. They've got a interesting selection of quality. I think the reason why I would be reluctant in putting them any higher is a lot of these players will be experiencing their first season at championship level, specifically as starters. But that being said, if there's someone who can make them believe they're capable, it's Big Nath.
Big Nath, that's a new one. I'm not sure it's going to catch on either. Yeah, when Charlton got promoted, I thought they would be the plucky underdogs who would just be happy to stay up. But I've been very impressed with their approach to signings. Firstly, because they've spent a lot more money than I was expecting. Where's this £10 million come from? Who cares? But they've recruited a nice mix of youth and experience. I've said it before, but the Rob Apter signing from Blackpool is one I really like. They've also now added Harvey Nibbs, who got 14 goals from midfield for Reading last season, and they've added to a squad which was already going to be pretty competitive at championship level in my eyes. Yes, they got promoted via the playoffs, but underlying data-wise, they were actually better than Wrexham last season. So, very canny manager Nathan Jones as well, who I am so delighted to see back in the championship on a content basis alone, but also because we're finally seeing him have success at a club other than Luton Town. And I think he's finally shown that when he's given a chance to build, Justin, he can make magic happen. And we're starting to see that really happen at Charlton.
Yeah, he is. We know what he's capable of. And I know Luton's not a wide degree of success in the sense that he's not had it at other clubs. So people will look at that Luton spell and go, we can only do it at one club, as you mentioned. But I think getting Charlton into the championship is a huge amount of success. And I think staying up, despite us putting Charlton 14th and me having higher hopes for them in the championship this season, I think staying up is absolutely imperative. Obviously, it's very difficult for League One clubs to do that unless you have Birmingham or Wrexham money. But we know that Nathan Jones will coach his teams to be horrible to play against. We know they'll be difficult to break down, and when you do break them down, you have to try and beat a goalkeeper who's more than capable at this level in Thomas Kaminski. So there's a really lovely blend there of steely wiliness and really good prospects. I really am excited about Charlton. Maybe I'm a bit too measured in placing them a little bit lower, but I think they can reach high. I think they've got the potential to do it. Yeah,
I like the look of the squad a lot. I think Nathan Jones will be very happy with what the higher-ups at Charlton have done for him. Thomas Kaminski has been brought in, a very experienced goalkeeper who played 38 games in the Premier League the season before last. Very easy to forget. The defence conceded the third fewest goals in League One last season. The star of that was the man who scored the winner in the playoff final, of course, Macaulay Gillespie. Kane Ramsey and Josh Edwards were both brilliant at fullback, but they've strengthened at the back as well with Reece Burke and Amari Bell, two players who Nathan Jones loved working with at Luton. In midfield, they've got the aforementioned Harvey Nibbs, a brilliant box-to-box midfielder who, as I say, got 14 goals from midfield last season. He'll play alongside Connor Coventry, the best ball-winning midfielder in League One last season. No issues at all with him stepping up to the Championship. Greg Doherty's a good operator at this level. Not so sure about Luke Berry or the two new signings they've made in midfield, Joe Rankin-Costello from Blackburn, Sonny Carey from Blackpool, but I'll happily be proven wrong on those two. The two wingers are where I'm very excited. I've already mentioned on the right, Rob Apter from Blackpool, Tyrese Campbell on the left, not that one. Two young wingers with a really high ceiling. And then up front, we've got a couple of new signings as well. Charlie Kelman from QPR and Isaac Aluafe from Stockport. 31 goals between them in League One last season. Slight concerns about them stepping up to the Championship, particularly Kelman, but Nathan Jones has a habit of turning coal into diamonds, Justin, and he may very well do the same with those two and the rest of the Charlton squad. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I know there is that case of, can they step up, but they've got the skill sets to, I think, thrive in the division. Oluwafe is a good ball carrier. He's quick. He draws fouls. He scored 10 in League One last season with Stockport. But as I say, those attributes that he's got will be very important. Charlie Kelman is interesting. He's scoring 21 in League One last season, getting the Golden Boot, I think is very impressive in amongst the teams that they were up against, like Birmingham and Preston and the players that they had. Charlie Kelman was the best striker in the division. I think he's still quite raw in a sense, and I do think maybe Charlton overpaid a touch, but nonetheless, I think he can still be very active and good. That's adding to the quality that they've got in Miles Leeburn. Matty Godden is experienced and smart. We know he's going to be a pest as well. So there's just a really good balance. There's a really, really nice balance. And
I think Joe Rankin Costello is an interesting one because I think if he stays injury free, he's a quality player. Just as injuries can creep up on him, but I'm excited about the squad. There's lovely balance. I'm sure they're going to continue adding to it as well. It's nice. It's very, very nice.
In 13th place, we have Swansea City. Swansea City, mid-table. Imagine my shock. I genuinely tried to find reasons to put Swansea anywhere other than 12th or 13th, Justin, but I'll be honest, I just could not do it.
Yeah, New Preston maybe. Good place to be.
Yeah.
A good place to be, but years of mediocrity can creep up on you. But perhaps it's similar to last year for me, anyway, in that there is a very good starting 11 there, but they're missing one or two components, and they still need to add depth to what is, I think, a good team. Recruitment has been so over the years, and whilst I do think they've majorly upgraded in certain areas, particularly midfield and defence, there just needs to be a little bit more to get me off my seat, to want to put them higher. But I think mid-table again is fine. It's just probably just a little bit boring from a Swansea perspective.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, when you have a team sat slap bang in the middle of the table, there's a lot to like, but there's a lot to put you off as well. Swansea do have players I could see playing for a top six club. Josh Key, Ben Cabango, Josh Timon, Gonzalo Franco. Ethan Galbraith from Leyton Orient is a terrific signing. They fought off a lot of competition to get him. They've been strongly linked as well with Richard Kone from Wickham, which would be a serious signing in my eyes. And if that were to come off, to be honest, I may be reconsidering 13th place. The issue is, though, the rest of the squad is looking a bit mediocre, particularly going forwards. I don't think the drop-off from those players who I mentioned there to the rest of the squad is as bad as other clubs in the division who we have below Swansea. But I would just need a bit more to get me out of my seat, if you see what I mean, Justin.
Yeah, completely agree. Like I said, they've made some obvious upgrades, particularly defensively, but it's that depth in the final third that you mentioned. Ronaldo and Irma are prolific. Are they prolific goal contributors? Is Jan Vipotnik good enough? I like him, but he was inconsistent last year. Liam Cullen did really well, but is he a reliable source of goals? So that Richard Kone link, if that does prove true and these signs for the club could change a lot, but they're still missing, for me, a big guy in the midfield to complement all of that as well. So whilst there's a puzzle being put together, it's just missing the corner piece, a central piece, and a couple of others that make it a complete picture.
Yeah, I guess so. And I look at that defence, Key, Cabango, one of Burgess or Santos and Timon. In possession, that might be one of the best defences in the division. There is a lot to like there about that back four. In midfield, Ethan Galbraith and Gonzalo Franco. It has the potential to be one of the best midfield pairings in the league. Both will complement each other very nicely. So I'm excited about that so far. But in attack, that's where my issues are. A lot of hard work, quality perhaps lacking. Liam Cullen got 11 goals last season. I'm not sure he's going to replicate that, especially when he hasn't got his annual goal against Cardiff now. Ronaldo and Sung would need to step up. Up front, Jan Vipotnik, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of. As I say, if they get Richard Kone, then I'll be interested, but I definitely need to see more in attack. And then, of course, another question mark is the manager, Alan Sheehan, who did terrifically well in caretaker charge last season. How's he going to do this season? We just don't know, Justin.
Yeah, I like him. He's performed well in a short space of time. I mean, 23 points from 36 last season is very good. But caretakers making that transition into permanent managers, it's a hard transition to make. I think he's a very clever guy, but we just don't know how good he is. Things are very different when you're not being reactive in season. When you've got a pre-season under your belt, things can change very specifically and quickly. And with that in mind, it's hard to be overly convinced by a guy who's just got a handful of games as a caretaker behind his belt. But got to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's done very well in the time he has been a caretaker, when other managers or the permanent managers at Swansea have ultimately failed.
Yeah, he seems to be a highly rated coach, but he wouldn't be the first caretaker manager to do very well and then not do so well as soon as he gets the job, would he? So that's the issue with him, but hopefully he can prove us wrong on that front. Justin, we'll have a quick break, shall we? After that, we'll venture into the top half of our league table predictions. Welcome back to the Second Tier Podcast. This is our league table predictions for the 25-26 season, and we have now finally reached the top half of the table. Justin, we begin this section with a side who were one of the bigger overachievers of last season after getting their first championship playoff finish in 17 years. In 12th, we have Bristol City, who we seem to think are going back to mid-table.
Well, yeah, 12th is very mid-table. I think it's one of those where you've got to take 2 steps back to take a step forward, or 3 steps forward if you're trying to overachieve in the next following seasons. The maths is correct. But I think it's a summer of change, isn't it? Because I think with Liam Manning, you're expecting a team there to build upon and keep building, but they've had to change because the approach from Norwich and ultimately him going there. So there's a change, and there with change comes uncertainties, and with those uncertainties, unfortunately, it's just a ranking down. And maybe if they had Liam Manning and they were building upon that with the same style and ethos, they'd be higher. But yeah, mid-table, probably a safer bet.
Yeah, this is what we had a bit of difference of opinion on, actually, because I had them 16th. Justin had them 8th. So he clearly thinks that losing Liam Manning isn't going to be that much of an issue. But I think with me, when I was looking at my table, I just found myself moving Bristol City further and further down because I was simply fancying other teams more than them. I think losing Liam Manning is such a big blow, despite Bristol City fans trying to play it down because he got this team playing above its level. So in comes Gerhard Struber, who will bring a high energy, high press philosophy. It'll be very fun watching them next season. He's had a mixed time at Cologne and RB Salzburg, but got to be pointed out, his underlying data at Cologne was ridiculously good last season. By far the best team in the German second tier. And the thing I would say is, Struber is such a rogue appointment in terms of what Bristol City usually go for. So they must have seen something in him to make them change tact. So we'll see. I like a lot of Bristol City players, but my big issue is, other than losing Manning, of course, is they haven't really strengthened while everyone around them has. If you cast your mind back to January, they didn't do any business, and they even admitted that was down to finances. And they haven't spent much this summer either. So how much spending room is there going forwards? Doesn't seem like much, Justin. So there are my concerns. Why are you a bit higher on the Robins?
I think the makeup of the squad, and look, I'm not overly convinced by Gerhard Struber because he's been out of the EFL for a long time, and there are mixed spells at both Cologne, RB Salzburg, and even Red Bull New York as well. But I'd be daft not to look at his style and go, that's very interesting, and then to mix that with a squad that he's got. I think, yeah, high octane, fun. They're the words that are coming to mind. Jason Knight and Max Bird are perfect for this heavy metal football, if you to cliche it. And he's going to play 2 up front, Struber. So Armstrong, Sinclair, and Emil Rees, great runners. They're going to suit the style on paper. And then you've got the finesse, the flair, the playmaking quality of Anis Mehmeti and Scott Twine, who, when fit, can deliver. They can deliver. So maybe 8th. Me picking them 8th. Choosing them as 8th was a bit high, but even with the lack of money, I still think there is a nice squad there. It's just not got any names in it. I think that's it. There's no big names who we can look at and go, well, they spent $6 million on him. There's nothing really drawing your eye. It's just a bit of the same with a different approach from your manager. And I think that approach from the manager is what's drawing me in. We saw elements of it, and I just think what he's got there, Adam Randall's another one you got to mention. What he's got, Struber at Bristol City is a really fun looking team.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you say there, Justin. As I say, I like a lot of Bristol City's players, but the squad needs strengthening. In goal, Max O'Leary is going to miss the first few months of the season. They've got in Joe Lumley, oh God, and Radek Vitek on loan from Manchester United. The defence is full of players I would class as steady, if unremarkable. The standout would be Luke McNally, but he's probably going to be out until around Christmas time. In midfield, 2 of the most underrated in the division, Jason Knight and Max Bird. 2 lads still in the early stages of their careers and should continue to improve. Big fans of those 2. Joe Williams, good player. Have got in Adam Randell from Plymouth, although I can't say it's one I'm personally too fussed about. In attack, you've got Anis Mehmeti. He got 12 goals last season. Is he going to repeat that tally? I would be surprised, but by all means, please prove me wrong, Anis. Scott Twine, we know what he's capable of. Could do with seeing that more, though. Yu Hirakara, Sinclair Armstrong, need to see more from them. And they've also got new signing Emma Reese, who's a good goal scorer, doesn't offer much outside the box. And even as I'm going through that squad there, Justin, even though I do like some Bristol City players, I'm losing confidence in them coming anywhere near doing what they did last season.
But I think a lot of that is because there's just no big names. And I don't think they will get near to what they achieved last season, getting into the top 6, because that was a huge achievement and a huge overachievement. And like we've alluded to, I still think this Bristol City squad is building. And if they were to invest a little bit more money, then perhaps that would be different. But that's why I've got them missing out on the playoffs, because they do need to recruit and invest, and they're just not. It might change with loan signings towards the end of the window. I would disagree defensively. I mean, Rob Atkinson was great at Portsmouth. Cameron Pring I really like, and Zach Viner is a very steady championship defender. Rob Dickey, again, I like him a lot. And I think this is one of the better balanced and maybe strongest Bristol City side we've seen in recent years. I do think that it just needs piecing together. Maybe Struber's the guy for that. Maybe. As I say, his underlying data in Cologne was ridiculously good. And I always say, I don't think the German second tier is a million miles off the Championship by any means. So it could very easily translate over. It'll be very interesting to see. I think for me, Justin, just looking at the teams we have beyond this point, these are the ones I can realistically see finishing in the top 6 this season. There may be one or two others in your minds, but I think we're getting serious now. In 11th place, we have West Bromwich Albion. A very difficult team to nail down, and the main reason for that is the manager. It's Ryan Mason. Had a couple of caretaker spells in charge of Tottenham, but otherwise, this is his first crack at management, and we just have no idea how he's going to get on, quite simply. Yeah, it was the safest place to put West Brom was mid-table, because then you can afford yourself the luxury of going, well, they can push higher. They've got the potential to push higher. That is absolutely true. But I like the makeup of everything. There's just the uncertainties. The mix of quality and physicality in the squad is great, but it's the start of a new chapter at the club under a new manager who has zero experience. So generally, who knows how that could go. But as we saw with last season, we know the squad is capable of competing in and around the playoffs. And I do certainly think it's been added to and added to with quality. So there's excitement there, but I guess it's tempered excitement with West Brom. Yeah, it's easy to forget with Ryan Mason because we all know about him as a player, but he was part of the first team coaching staff at Spurs for the past 4 years, and he's only just turned 30. That's a very impressive thing for any coach. And he was highly thought of at Tottenham. I'm always an advocate for giving young coaches a chance in management. There's been plenty of success stories in the EFL in recent years. Doesn't always work out, but I like to think with Mason, because we all know his career ended prematurely, I imagine he'll want to make up for the years he lost in his playing career with his coaching. So he will be desperate for this to work, and he will be giving it 110%. It's easy to forget after a pretty poor end to the campaign that this is a talented team, Justin, as well, who were sat in the playoffs for more than half of last season. I completely forget about that. But they were, for a long time, the best of the rest outside of the top 4 last season. Yeah, they were. You've only got to look at the likes of Tom Fellows, who's a quality winger, very young, still very raw. Alex Mauer is a very solid operator at championship level. Isaac Price, new signing last January, showed what he's capable of at times last season. I'm really excited by him. But then they've added to the defence with Nat Phillips, who I think we all know how much I like him if you've been listening to the podcast in recent weeks. There's Hegem as well. Lovely pairing. Mixed out with Arnie Hegebo, who's a new signing from Norway up front. There's depth everywhere. And you're right to mention how long they were in the playoffs last season. And I think a lot of Deadwood has been moved on. Certain question marks need to be raised. Is the goalkeeping department good enough? Is Josh Griffiths good enough to be number one? We know Joe Wildsmith is understudy. I say he's understudy, he's very experienced understudy. Isn't. Josh Madger, Daryl Dike, injury records, hard to convince. So if they're fit, there's goals there. If they're struggling, relying on Arnie Hegebo is probably a little bit too much. So Another one, Jed Wallace. What's he gonna deliver this season? God knows. We know what he can do, but again, is he going to deliver it? God, we don't know. But with that, there's still quality there. There's still a lot of quality there, a lot of potential as well, which is great. And I think they've recruited really smartly and really well this summer. Probably the smartest transfer window they've had since, I don't know, the year Slaven Bilic was appointed, with Grady Dean Garner and others joining the club.
Yeah, you mentioned a fair few players there, but I'll just run through the squad in my eyes. As you say, goalkeeper seems to be a worry. It looks as if they're sticking with young Josh Griffiths, and there's some concerns amongst Albion fans whether he's ready, but we'll certainly see very soon. The defence was the best outside of the top six last season, the standout being Torbjorn Hegem. However, he has been linked with a move to Italy, and that would be a big blow if they were to lose him. They have strengthened at the back with the additions of Nat Phillips and USA international George Campbell. In midfield, Alex Maurer, still doing bits, continues to have one of the best left foots at this level. I'm very excited to see more of Isaac Price, 21-year-old box-to-box midfielder, looks a very talented player after joining in January. He could be a really, really exciting player. Jason Malumbi's there as well. He's a big shithouse. On the wing, they have Tom Fellows, who's one of the best young talents at this level. 14 assists last season. They've got Mikey Johnston, who's sticking around after a bizarre move to Brazil fell through. Carlin Grant, still a dangerous player too. And then up front, we have new signing Aaron Hegebo, nicknamed the Hook. So you can kind of guess what kind of striker he is. Moved for around £4.5 million from Norway. Very intrigued by him. Josh Maja is back, on course to be top goal scorer last season before getting injured in January. Injuries continue to be a concern around him, but if he's fit, could be a very, very good player. And then there's Daryl DK. Can he finally stay fit? The answer's no, because he's got injured again already, but it is only for a few weeks. This is really his last chance in a West Brom shirt, because it's his final year of his contract. If it doesn't work now, it's never going to happen. So overall, a lot to like with West Brom. It wouldn't surprise me if they completely confound our expectations, but we just don't know how Ryan Mason's going to do. So we can't convincingly put them much higher than this, unfortunately.
Yeah, it would be difficult to sit and do that. But that being said, it's a good squad. It's a very good squad that is capable of pushing for the playoffs. Didn't quite get in the playoffs last season, so that tells you, again, the transition you need to go through this summer. But as you mentioned and reeled off with those players, there are a lot of really good, solid players. There's experience balanced with potential. Like I said, it's been a really smart summer for them. And they've needed it. They've absolutely needed it, because they've been, dusting around the bargain basement for a very long time and overpaying or paying on wages for a very long time. So now this is the chance. This is start a new chapter, and with Ryan Mason at the helm, like we said, who knows what could happen? But it's been a very, very good start.
Yeah, easy to forget. This time last year, they had a EFL imposed business plan that they had to try and comply with. And it seems like they're starting to flex their financial muscles a bit more now onto these new owners. So that's certainly something to keep in mind going forwards. In 10th place, we have our beloved Derby County, Justin. I had them a few places higher than you, but I think it's fair to say, as two Derby fans, this is the most optimistic we've been about a new season for a while. That's in part down to some pretty exciting business, but mostly down to the manager.
Yep, it's all John Eustace. Don't get me wrong, the signings they've made already this summer have played a huge role in that, but actually just having John Eustace, the man can do wonders. He can make a Ford Fiesta look like a bloody Ferrari. That's how I would view him. It's just what he can do, what he's capable of. When he came in last season, he played the percentages. Yes, it was a hard watch at times, but they were never going to be a sexy football team. But Derby defensively were among the best in the division from the moment he took over, and that proved pivotal in building a solid platform, getting goals where they could, and ultimately staying in the Championship when actually all the odds, they should have gone down. They absolutely should have gone down. But John Eustace, the genius he is, no, he said no. But now what he's got now at the club is he's being backed. He's being backed. Definitely being backed more than he would have at Blackburn. We can say that, guaranteed. But actually, the signings that they have made, Derby, have been very smart. So I'm really excited to see what John Eustace can do with a wee bit of cash.
Yeah, well, Eustace did 2 manager of the season worthy jobs last season, didn't he, at Blackburn and then Derby. That is why he is our reigning manager of the season. And he's proven himself to be an extremely smart operator at this level, even going back to when he was at Birmingham. And I think he's finally starting to get some recognition for that. Very tactically switched on and brilliant at getting the best out of the players at his disposal. In my eyes, he alone is worth a few extra places. But I think Derby have made some exciting moves this summer, Justin.
Yeah, they have. They have Patrick Agyemang's I would say the one in lights, isn't he? Because he's cost a fair bit of money. Carlton Morris, we know, is a coup. Owen Beck's come in at wing back. David Ozo, actually, I think he's a very smart signing. Obviously, he was on loan last season, but was injured for a large majority of it. But if he stays fit, I think he could be one of the best ball winners in the league next season. Danny Bart's a smart addition on a free transfer from Blackburn, along with Andy Vyman, who will both be very reliable squad players. And then there's Ryan Brewster.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I say it with a pondering tone because I'm excited, but I don't know why.
Well, is it because you ranked him as one of your best free agents available on the market over the summer? We'll get onto that very shortly. But look, Derby was solid at the back last season, and I expect them to be even better this time around. Matt Clark, possibly the most underrated centre-back in the division. I think he is absolutely class. They've got Sandro Langas, who cost $4 million in January, looked a very good defender. Danny Batts coming off the back of a surprisingly great season at Blackburn with Eustace. And then at left back, they've got Owen Beck on loan, who was also at Blackburn with Eustace and is a great young defender. Right back is a bit confusing because they've got Kane Wilson, who is one of the best in the division in my eyes, but Derby keep getting linked with right backs. So maybe he's leaving. I'm not too sure. In midfield, we have Abu Adams, the man who was by far the leading ball winner in the division last season. If you avoid giving him the ball, he's great. David Ozo has come back. If he can stay fit, he looks a really exciting young talent. They definitely need some more creativity in midfield, but Kenzo Houdme could be someone who flourishes under Eustace. In attack, new signing Carlton Morris, my dark horse for top goal scorer in our predictions last week. They've splashed out a lot of money on American striker Patrick Agyemang, around $6 million, which is an awful lot by Derby's standards post Mel Morris. Very quick, very strong. I'm starting to suspect he may have been brought in with the intention for him to be a winger. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. And Ryan Brewster, new signing on a free. As I was saying a second ago, we picked him out as one of the best free agents available in the summer after a bright end to his Sheffield United career. Could be a real coup if he stays fit. Unfortunately, that if is a big one, as always, with him. And then finally, there's Corey Blackett-Taylor, almost a forgotten man at Derby, but he's been lethal in pre-season on the left-hand side, so it could be a real revelation this coming season. Creativity is the problem, Justin, but this squad is better than what Eustace had at Blackburn last season, and he was on the periphery of the playoffs with them. So with a bit of backing, I don't think you can rule out Derby and the top 6. Here's the cynical Derby fan talking.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm not being cynical. I'm not being a pessimist. I think they're a few short of being a top 6 team. I know you said with...
Sounds very cynical and pessimistic.
No, have a word. I think you've got to look at the likes of Patrick Agyemang. He's injured. He's probably not going to be fit to play until October. Lars-Jørgen Salverson, the backup striker, when is he going to be fit? It's another question. Similar with Matt Clark, who picked up a knock as well. Kane Wilson's been injured all pre-season. There are just some things holding me back a little bit. Again, there'll be players that need to be moved on. You mentioned the right backs, Kane Wilson, Ryan Yambe, Jake Rooney can play right back, Joe Ward can play right back. They need to make movements, get players out to bring players in, I think, which will be the next step. Ben Osborne is a question mark because he's been there, but I keep forgetting about him despite him being a very experienced Championship player. That being said, I think there's a really good formula being put together. I think playoffs is probably a little bit too early. They do need to add in the wide areas. Corey Blackett-Taylor, I want on record, I picked him out to be my key player for Derby this season before he got going in pre-season. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least 10 assists this campaign, especially with the firepower he's got to provide to. But less of that. I think it's too early for playoffs. I think, as I say, a few more players short, a couple of players are injured that need to come back. Just a little bit cautious.
He says he's not cynical, but then continues to be very cynical.
It's not cynical, it's logic, all right? That's the difference.
Okay, yeah, as I say, it sounds very cynical. Well, that's one big question, Justin. Can Derby make a break for the playoffs this season? But the biggest question of all involving Derby County is, will this finally be the season that Ryan Nyambe scores the record holder for the most appearances in Championship history without ever finding the back of the net? 202 appearances and counting, Justin.
It's very serious to bring this up because we watched it with great importance last season. His injury cut that potential short, unfortunately, but he's got another campaign to get going. I hope Derby don't recruit another right back because we need to see Ryan Nyambe either achieve the impossible by scoring or achieve the impossible by being the longest ever player to never score in his career.
He didn't register a single shot last season, so we may
How will you celebrate if he has a shot?
I will be celebrating if he has a shot. I'll look insane, but I will be celebrating if Ryan Nyambe even shoots next season. But that's definitely one to watch out for. The final team in this part of our league table predictions, ladies and gents, is the team we've got ninth. It is Norwich City. I know I said in the first episode that I said Wrexham are the hardest team to predict this coming season, but I'm now going to retract that statement because I actually think Norwich are more fitting. And that's because I think the net for where they could realistically finish this season is so wide. I am genuinely thinking anything between third and around 18th is possible with them. If everything clicks, they could comfortably finish in the playoffs. They've got an attack which cost a combined £22 million, and they've got Liam Manning, who did remarkably well at Bristol City last season. However, on the flip side, I can't rule out a disastrous season. The recruitment under the sporting director, Ben Napper, has not worked out so far, despite the big outlay. But it's mostly down to them losing Boya Sainz and probably Josh Sargent, because if that does happen, they finished 13th last season despite having two players getting 15 plus goals. Serious question, where would they have finished without them? That is a scary thought, and it's why it's such a wide spectrum with Norwich this season, Justin.
Yeah, they're really hard to put down. Really hard. I mean, I had them in the top half in my own league table, mainly because it's hard not to like the squad. It really isn't hard. But if they can keep Josh Sargent, then I don't see why they can't push for the playoffs. But it's a big if. It's a really big if. I don't think Liam Manning will overcomplicate things. I think he'll do the bare minimum for essentially getting into the top half, and then it'll be up to the players and the quality of signings they've made, whether actually are any good or not, to push them higher. But I certainly think this squad is too good to finish in the bottom half with what they already have. And then there's the potential of those players that have been bought over the last 12 months to actually kick on and improve them. But like you said, that net is very wide for Norwich. I think we're sat on the optimistic side of the net, if you like, to that, to them not being in the bottom half, basically.
Yeah, well, you say you'd be surprised if they finish in the bottom half. They finished in the bottom half last season with Josh Sargent and Boya Sainz.
That was a surprise.
So there you go. That's why I don't think you can completely rule out something like that happening. Yeah, I really can't make up my mind on Norwich, simply because we don't know how many of their players are going to do well this season. New goalkeeper Vladan Kovacevic, judging from some clips of pre-season, seems like an absolute madman. So I'm looking forward to watching him. Harry Darling's a new signing at the back, on the ball, one of the best defenders at this level. Jakov Medic has also been brought in from Ajax. Shane Duffy's there as well. At right back, Jack Stacey's very solid. Callum Fisher, very good young backup. Left back is young Ben Christine, who's got potential. And Jeffrey Schlupp's there as well. Marcelino Nunes, an excellent midfielder who can really make things happen. Jacob Wright is a very exciting young talent who they've signed from Man City on a permanent. He's one to watch. He could be brilliant. There's new signing Mirko Topic, who's joined for $3 million. Looks like he'll be playing in front of the defence, so interested to see how he gets on. There's also experience there with Kenny McLeay and Emi Marcondes. Going forward is where the real carnage is. All of these players are below the age of 24, and have all cost a lot of money. And Mankwell Forson is a number 10 who cost 4 million last summer, but spent more time on the bench so far at Norwich. Ante Cernak cost 9 million last summer, but has not had the desired impact so far. Mataj Jurasek cost 6 million in January. He's barely played because he's been unable to stay fit. We've got new striker Matthias Kvistgaarden, who cost 7 million, scored goals for fun in Denmark. We've got Papa Amadou Diallo, a new winger who cost 4 million after impressing at Metz in the French second tier. Justin, that's £30 million worth of talent I've just mentioned there. And I have no idea if any of them are going to be any good. As I say, if they click, they could be deadly. But Norwich's transfers under this new sporting director have not gone very well at all so far.
They've not gone very well, or they've been slow burners. I think I would use that language. I think that would be the more accurate thing to say, or fairer thing to say, potentially. It's one of them where I go, I'm really excited by it, but also really nervous. It's certainly one of them, and I think a ninth place finish probably reflects that, because you can be excited at the fact that you've got a 21-year-old in Ante Cernak who's got so much potential, Matthias Kvistgaarden, who costs a lot of money, got, again, so much potential, but a bit of history as well. Mataj Jurasek, so much potential and very highly rated. You're asking them to essentially do what the likes of Boy Signs and Josh Sargent did last season, do it this season, without actually having any history of knowing it's going to happen in Championship. And that's the uncertainty, but I think that's why it's exciting, because on paper it's lovely, but in reality it might not be the case. And this will be a make or break, I guess, year for Ben Napper, because if these players don't have a good season, then he's going to be out of a job, because you spent a lot of money, and if they don't deliver, you've done a shit job.
Yeah, I think that's pretty undeniable. The pressure's on him, isn't it? He'll be massively helped if Josh Sargent stays, which I'd be surprised if he did, but it seems more likely than it did a few weeks ago, which would obviously be a huge boost for Norwich. And we've mentioned all the new signings they've made there. We haven't really mentioned Liam Manning yet, which is probably their biggest signing they'll make all summer. I think that is such a big coup for Norwich. One of the contenders for manager of the season last season, and he's gone back to the city where he was born and raised. He's a massive positive for Norwich. And as far as this season goes, I don't know how it's going to work out, but in the long term, I think he will be a success at Carrow Road. But there we go, ladies and gents. This has been part 2 of our league table predictions. This has been our middle 8, where we've been talking about the teams who we think will be having a bit of mid-table mediocrity / maybe having a look at the playoffs this coming campaign. But we'll be back again on Thursday with our top 8 in our league table predictions. Who do we think is winning the league? Who do we think is going up? Who do we think is finishing in the top 6? All will be revealed then, and I cannot bloody wait, especially for the reactions, because that's going to be interesting, as it always is. But we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.